Sean has been in the autopsy game for a while. A while, guys. Back in 2018, CBS did a little bit of an investigation on this fellow's, a CBS 4 investigation, where they were looking at the company and Sean in particular, because there were complaints and individuals who would say, hey, I paid this outfit for an autopsy and I've been trying to get in touch with them to get a final report. I can't get in touch with them.
History is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know.
So let's talk about this. There's a man that we're going to name because he just got indicted. A man named Shawn, S-H-A-W-N, Parcells, P-A-R-C-E-L-L-S, if you want to look it up. He's a 42-year-old man from Topeka, Kansas, and he did some messed up things. He had a company, or has a company, I suppose I should say. Maybe had is better. Called National Autopsy Services, LLC. National Autopsy Services. It's kind of a weird name, don't you think, guys? It sounds like a generic autopsy shop.
It definitely sounds more governmental than it actually is.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the clever things. It's just like how you can put all natural on cereal boxes and make it sound very, very different from the reality of the ingredients. You see this in privatized insurance companies. Put national in front of something. You'll be associated with a nation or a federal government when that is not the case.
It's also like autopsies aren't really something I think of as a thing that we have to be individually worried about. Funeral arrangements and cremation and all that. Yes, that is something we have to take care of for our loved ones. But an autopsy usually comes with the death.
Yeah, depending on what the circumstances are, right? And if there's ever anything, if there's anything puzzling about the death at all, then an autopsy will generally be ordered by the law enforcement that's involved taking care of that case, right? It's not something you imagine you'd write on your calendar like, oh yeah, I need to get a couple autopsies done this month. I'm just going to go ahead and pencil that in.
You don't know my calendar.
You're right. No, you're right. But it I guess for many of us listening, seems like an odd thing, right? Mm-hmm. That even that there would be 350 clients of this company called National Autopsy LLC. I'll give you the Better Business Bureau spiel on it. It's pretty short. There's a little alert if you find them. It says, current alerts for this business. BBB investigation results. A Better Business Bureau investigation found that the website for National Autopsy Services at www.nationalautopsyservices.com identifies a corporate office location in Topeka, Kansas, as well as one in another location. And then it says there are a pattern of complaints, you guys. BBB records indicate a pattern of unanswered complaints wherein customers allege providing payment for autopsies and not receiving a copy of the final report. I'm going to finish this out, guys. I'm sorry. I know it's a little long. In addition, consumers allege making numerous attempts to contact the company, National Autopsy Services, via phone and emails and receive no response. BBB has received no response from the business regarding the alleged complaints. So, not great if you are, an amateur autopsy seeker or even a law enforcement agency that's looking to, get a third party for some of your autopsies done. That wouldn't be great if you saw that on the BBB website, which many of us use to vet companies.
Yeah, also shout out, just to interject here, as people who are generally skeptical of trade organizations and nonprofits also have their share of sketch. I do have to point out that here in the U.S., the Better Business Bureau does good work. And actually contacting the Better Business Bureau, shout out to Clark Howard there, can get you results when customer service does not. There's something interesting, Matt. This says not BBB accredited. So for anybody looking at the website in the top left, when you see that when you see that thumbnail, that means that the Better Business Bureau is telling you, we don't trust them. Implication being, you shouldn't either. Go somewhere else for your autopsies.
Try other autopsies. With the it's just the Kansas Autopsies Incorporated or whatever. I don't know. Just making up names here. Okay, so let's talk about what Sean did with this company and the reason why it has that BBB rating or the complaints as it stated. So this guy, Sean, has been in the autopsy game for a while. Guys. Back in 2018, CBS did a little bit of an investigation on this fellow. It was a CBS 4 investigation where they were looking at the company and Sean in particular, because there were complaints and individuals who would say, hey, I paid this outfit for an autopsy and I've been trying to get in touch with them to get a final report. I can't get in touch with them. Then I think it's CBS. I'm pretty sure this is correct. CBS actually got in touch with the guy and he's saying, oh, well, I don't have the correct, contact information for this particular client. I've been trying to send this report. I've had it for months. And then they find out through the person they're interviewing, the client, that they signed a contract which included all of their contact information, the client's contact information. So it was just a lie that was told. And this guy, Sean Parcels, was arrested back in 2019 and charged with theft and criminal desecration. Do you think that just means he was performing autopsies when he wasn't supposed to be?
Well, yeah, also begs the question, is there a lesser form of desecration that is not criminal? Is there misdemeanor desecration? Desecration just in and of itself just sounds pretty bad news. It sounds like there is intent in the act of desecrating something.
Mm-hmm. Well, that is the case. I'm just going to give you one example. You can go to cbsnews.com and you can find an article from 2018 titled "Littleton Woman Still Seeking Answers in Husband's Death." And you can read about a man named David Evans and a woman named Patty Evans. David passed away and it was, just suddenly in the home. So Patty wanted answers and she just stumbled upon National Autopsy Services online and thought, well, hey, maybe I can get this independent autopsy done and I can just find out how he died, why he died. So she ended up contacting them and she ended up paying $3,550 to National Autopsy Services to get this done. It must have meant a lot to her, right? You can imagine to pay that much money for something. And she signed a contract back in December 2017, sent it off, and, paid for it all in that time, right around Christmas 2017. And, nothing was happening. She wasn't getting any results, wasn't getting a final report. She was attempting to contact the company and she couldn't get through. This is the person I was mentioning at the top.
She got ghosted. And also, just for a watermark here, folks, a private autopsy, if I recall correctly, will typically run between $3,000 to $5,000. So this is not especially egregious, but abandoning a person who has paid you for the autopsy does seem egregious. Criminal desecration, if we're being completely objective about it, means treatment of the body in an illegal manner, right? A way that's outside of the law. Just like the guy here in Georgia who was caught charging people for cremation when he was in fact just throwing human remains into the nearby woods. You remember that story?
Yep.
I mean, I think it's especially egregious when any kind of deception is egregious, is obviously horrible. But when you are capitalizing on someone's grief and need for answers or some sort of spiritual connection and or closure. So I think those two things, I think that's a great analog, Ben, the fake cremations or whatever, because they both are capitalizing on someone's very deep and personal, pain. Yeah. Absolutely. That's well said, Noel.
Guys, I want to jump to now, 2022, why we're even talking about this right now, because that was back in 2018, 2017. This guy, Sean, was recently, as of this past Monday, September 19th, he was sentenced to 6 years in prison for wire fraud, not for bad autopsying or, conducting autopsies
Sorry.
while not a doctor.
Right. It's not the fact that you're a terrible person. You lied about being a doctor, and you were predatory toward people, the most vulnerable moment of their lives. It's that you messed with the money.
Oh yeah, dude, we didn't even get to that yet, Ben. Let's talk about it. This guy was not a pathologist. He was not somebody who should be or had any business conducting autopsies. He was
just a pathological liar, not a pathologist.
In that way, he was a pathologist. He was an assistant, a pathology assistant. He had no formal education. He didn't go to school for this thing. He didn't have a degree. He was an assistant that was charging $3,000 to $5,000 for autopsies. Yeah, and he made. Guess how much money he made doing this, guys, over the course of several years.
Quite a lot.
How much money?
It was I've seen it in a couple places. $1.1 million or $1.166 million, which that's a whole extra year's salary there. That 0.66.
It depends on how good. That's a lucky year for that to be a whole 1 year's salary. But also it depends really on how adept he would have been at hiding his ill-gotten gains.
And wire fraud would be as simple as just illegally transferring ill-gotten gains, right?
I guess so. Well, I don't know. In this case, it's because he charged a client $5,000 to get an autopsy done, and then no report.
Wire fraud is essentially a reference to the format of the fraud, right? You can pull some cons and frauds in person all the live long day. That's not wire fraud until it's over electronic communication or via telephone. So
it doesn't even necessarily mean transferring funds. It can just be using telecommunications or the internet. I'm sorry. That's good to clarify. I always thought it was having to do with money or bank transfers. When I think of a wire, I think of like a wire transfer for money.
Yeah, and I think the same. It's pretty much it's structured or framed as a way to define where the crime happens, and they're saying it doesn't happen in a physical location. So
it's out there somewhere inside this
scamming people, with like fake, calls and such. That would be considered wire fraud.
Yeah, it's way less cool than the literal definition, which is not a real thing, which should be fraud using the fraud via the use of wires, like physical wires, like in martial arts movies where they're jumping from the trees and doing really crazy crouching tiger, hidden dragon stuff. They're not really jumping. That could be considered wire fraud. Not in court, though.
That's really funny, but
thank you. The key to a joke landing is when someone looks at you and says, "That's really funny."